Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're so glad you're with us to stay curious today. Today, we got a program about an astronaut birthday. We got some space history we're going to talk about. We're going to thank historytravel.org there. And we're going to talk about a German rocket scientist that you know his face very well. You don't know much about him, I would gather. And one of our shuttles of the month of May takes us to the planet Venus, which is right off the side of my head here on this green screen. As this is the way the sky looks tonight, May 3rd, 2023, at about 8:30. About an hour after the sun sets, Venus is high up in the sky still. Betelgeuse is part of Orion the Hunter. That's it, Marty. There you got it. All right, Marty's looking to see what we've got going there. Thank you, Marty. Had a little glitch there. Capella, Betelgeuse, Sirius, real bright stars, and above my head is Mars, just above the American in the American Space Museum up there. Mars, hardly second magnitude. You see it up there, another bright star, Procyon. Those are the winter stars that are setting. Venus is so brilliant because it's covered in clouds, and yet we're going to see through those clouds thanks to a spacecraft that was launched by a space shuttle, one of the space shuttles of our month of May. So hello to Marty Winkle. We have a few little hiccups in our Streamlab program here. If we go off air, we'll be right back with you again. Marty, we've got a big weekend. We do want to thank GoHistoryTravel.org. Could you bring up the things for me there, please, sir? There you go. GoHistoryTravel.org. Our friends Mal and Ram to the left there, his wife Mal, and son Bharat made a substantial donation to the American Space Museum. We want you to check out their website, GoHistoryTravel.org. Marty, I hit Y there, and it made it big. Okay, so I'm not going to control the screen. Please control the screen and your writing. I don't know what you're writing down there, but we need you to run the board there. Next slide, please. We got the Astronaut Hall of Fame this weekend, bringing in a lot of astronauts at our. I'm invited to a rocket lunch of notables. A real privilege to be at, and astronaut Kay Heyer showed up today. So hello to Kay. She wants to stay curious one day with us. But we're going to induct Saturday Roy Bridges Jr. and Senator Mark Kelly. And Roy Bridges had one space mission with Space Lab 2 in 1985. And he was the director of Kennedy Space Center from 1997 to 2003. And then Mark Kelly, of course, the brother of twin Scott Kelly. He has 50 days in space on 4 space missions, including the commander of the last flight of Discovery, STS-134 in 2011. Actually, that was Endeavour that he was the commander of. So that bringing a lot of astronauts around here. If you want to see a few, go to Zorella's if you're in town and eat there. So we also want to mention that tomorrow we're going to have on our program, Marty, would you advance the slide there? We're going to have Marie Fullerton. There's her husband, Gordon Fullerton. He passed away 10 years ago. Marie keeps the legacy of her husband and all of the Apollo and early shuttle era astronauts alive. Mark Usiak, thank you for efforting that. Mark's going to be on the program with us tomorrow. And Marie Fullerton on a special Stay Curious interview with, we're going to talk about being an astronaut wife and all of the fun she had. And I can't wait to meet her. She certainly seems like a delightful lady, carrying on the fire for her wonderful husband, Gordon Fullerton. Of course, he was part of the Apollo or approach and landing tests of the shuttle. Then he was on STS-3 and STS-51F as commander. So have that tomorrow. Well, a year ago, Marty, sad but true, we had Mr. Hugh Harris on our program a year ago. That's okay. Hugh Harris.
You're okay to change.
Okay. Hugh Harris, we lost him in February, and we are going to honor him. In fact, his daughter and son have asked the American Space Museum if we would host a memorial to Hugh after their graveside services they're going to have at the Cape Canaveral Cemetery in Mims. We're going to have a 3 p.m. May 23rd, Tuesday memorial for Mr. Harris. Here he is, the first time I met him on Stay Curious Marty, the good old days of COVID. That was almost 3 years ago. Me being a journalist, I was actually butterflies to interview this gentleman because he's a man that I've always looked up to in the journalism industry. And we hit it off and become a great friend of Hugh and the museum here. And we lost him at age 90. So we're going to honor him on May 23rd, Tuesday. We'll do some pre-publicity about that. Yes, some of his friends said they would come on our 4 o'clock Stay Curious broadcast and honor the great late Mr. Hugh Harris. Well, a happy birthday to this astronaut, Dr. Albert Al Sacco Jr. Now, Marty, talk about a one-and-done astronaut, one and done for a good reason. Born May 3rd, 1949 in Boston, Massachusetts. He is 74 years old today. He has been on the faculty of Whitaker College of Engineering at Texas Tech University for many years. Showing him in this picture. Next picture. Oh, let me go backwards. There we go. Oh, I hit T. There. All right. Go forward again. There we go. There he is, how he looks in his 70s there. 74 birthday. Sacco was on STS-73, okay, which was a Microlab 2. And Marty, he got to spend 15 days in space on his only journey to space. Then he was in the queue to be on STS-107, all right, and actually training with those astronauts until 2 months before launch of 107, he was replaced by Israeli payload specialist Ilan Ramon. And of course, that was the fateful last flight of Columbia in 2003. So, Albert Sacco, we wish you a happy birthday. 74 years old, 15, almost 16 days in space on his one space flight. Chemical engineering degree. He's a chemist and continued after his NASA career. When he retired after the Columbia accident, continued as a faculty member at Texas Tech University. Okay, so next up we have, and today in space history, an opportunity to talk about a man in this famous picture. If you're a space geek, you know this picture, all right? Everybody knows this picture, all right? Who are these people, and who is in this picture, Marty? And, well, of course, everybody knows Werner von Braun, and you got rockets back there. But what was this all about? And who's that guy in the front right there? Well, that guy in the front is none other than Hermann Oberth. Okay, there's Hermann Oberth. In 1922, Marty, 1922, that is, by my ciphering, that's 101 years ago, right? All right, 101 years ago, Oberth wrote the great Robert Goddard asking for a copy of his 1920 book, A Method of Reaching Extreme Altitudes. Oberth was a young German rocket scientist. Well, Goddard, concerned with the German interest in spaceflight, sent him a courtesy copy with some apprehension. The following year, Oberth reciprocated by sending Goddard a copy of Die Rockets of Germany, all right? Oberth's contribution to the rocket world in the 1920s. Goddard is convinced that Oberth borrowed his ideas and refers to him as that German Oberth, okay? Well, a year later, 100 years ago, Oberth proposes circumlunar flight. In discussions of the uses of interplanetary rocketry, Hermann Oberth proposed circumlunar flight to explore the hidden face of the moon and discuss the possibility of storing cryogenic fuels in space. A spacecraft could rendezvous and dock in Earth orbit with a fuel capsule. Then the spacecraft reached the vicinity of a planet. It would detach itself from the capsule and descend to the surface. On departure, the spacecraft would ascend and reconnect to its fuel supply for the return trip. Sound familiar? 100 years ago, this man was proposing the circumlunar flights like that. And then finally, here he is, the son of a physicist and Oberth is the German father of rocketry. He has a mixed legacy. On one hand, he developed the V-2 rocket for Nazi Germany during World War II, of course, with Werner von Braun. On the other hand, his ideas, rejected as implausible when he submitted them as part of his doctorate thesis at the University of Munich in 1912, his ideas paved the way for the development of rocketry and later helped launch the U.S. into space. All right. Although Oberth developed many of his early ideas at the same time as American engineer Robert Goddard and Russian scientist Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, there is no evidence that they relied on one another's work. As such, all three men are regarded as the fathers of rocketry, all in the early 1900s. All right. Well, Oberth proposed, he was very fascinated and turned on, like everybody, by the science fiction works of the time. Of course, H.G. Wells, the trip to the moon, and H.G. Wells had a big rocket. I mean, Jules Verne, not H.G. Wells. Inspired by Jules Verne's science fiction novel From Earth to the Moon, Oberth applied the math of what was involved at age 14 and came up with a recoil rocket, all right? And then in 1955, Oberth moved to the United States to team up with von Braun at the U.S. Army, of course, the rocket center there in Huntsville, Alabama, and they helped develop the Saturn V rocket, all right? But before that, Marty, they thought about a giant cannon to rocket to the moon, like in Jules Verne's famous novel. And this was the Valerie Oberth moon gun. And such moon guns were proposed and tried even by military means on there. Oberth in 1923, 100 years ago, also first described space mirrors as a way of harvesting the energy of the sun to make energy. So quite a genius of his time, Oberth. And now back to that famous picture. And anybody name of the people in the picture, Marty? We should have had him do that for a contest. Of course, that's Hermann Oberth in the foreground, and von Braun seated on his right shoulder there. Well, the other gentleman left to right is Ernst Stunlinger, and then standing in the back is U.S. Army General H.N. Toftoy. And then Robert Lasar is standing on the right behind von Braun. And who were these people? They were Project Paperclip officials and participants, okay? These were the American military general that brought the Project Paperclip, was getting the German scientists over here to America. So that famous picture, Oberth, obviously, you can't miss him in there. He discovered the Oberth effect, in which a rocket engine, when traveling at high speed, generates more useful energy than one traveling at low speed. There's a crater on the moon and an asteroid named after him. And on Star Trek 3, got to have a Star Trek reference in there. The search for Spock, the USS Grissom was classified as an Oberth-class starship. All right, and several other Oberth-class starships appeared in Star Trek films and the television series. So a little space history there, looking back in time at one of the rocket greats that, though he developed the V-2 rocket, he helped von Braun develop the Saturn V rocket, Hermann Oberth. Well, Marty, 10 beautiful shuttles launched in the month of May. My May shuttle folder over here tells me that we have a total of 74 humans launched in space, 11 women on those 10 shuttles, and some really, really great missions, including 2 missions, one going to the planet Venus, all right, and another one, the Hubble telescope upgrade on there. STS-30 is the Magellan mission, where instead of using it was proposed to launch these space probe to Venus and Jupiter, which have been STS-34, with a Centaur liquid-fueled rocket, with hydrogen being the fuel in the payload bay of the shuttle. And needless to say, astronauts were a little bit edgy to have that happen, Marty, because after all, liquid fuel, hydrogen in there, could blow up, Marty. So, Marty, you're looking for the feed is always at the top, okay? And there it is. So we're okay?
The Atlantic bus got started locked up, but we're good.
Okay, we came back again there. All right. In there. And so they ended up putting a PAM, PAM stands for Payload Assist Module, literally a solid rocket booster at the bottom of the satellite, and that's how we got to Venus with Magellan, that we'll talk about here in a minute, with the Magellan astronauts. STS-48, is the maiden flight of Endeavour. All right, I actually have 49 there, and that's a mistake on my part. It's actually 49's Endeavour. And our good friend Bruce Melnick was on that one. Atlantis, 125, launched May 11th, was the last time we touched the Hubble telescope in 2009. All right, STS-132, all right, took the shuttle's robotic arm and looked for damage underneath the shuttle. That was a big deal on there. Went to the Space Shuttle, docked the pressurized module on there. And 84 is the 6th Mir docking we'll talk about later this month. And the STS-134, that is Scott Kelly's final mission and Endeavour's flight. With Box Johnson was his pilot on that mission up there. And STS-77 was a 10-day mission with a space hab, okay, the type of configuration that was flown on Columbia on its final flight. All kinds of payloads in the space hab there. John Casper was the pilot. Kurt Brown, was the commander. Kurt Brown was the pilot on that 10-day mission. Then STS-101 was the 3rd International Space Station hard hat flight. All right. And Atlantis was taking up pressurized U.S. modules up there. And 96, on the 27th of the month, was another mission, the 2nd International Space Station flight, all right, a year before STS-101, obviously there. And then 124 that ends the month took up the Kibo laboratory to the space station. And Mark Kelly was the commander of that one up there. So Mark's got a mission this month as well as he had one last month, and he's being inducted into the Hall of Fame this weekend. So one of the missions we talked about that went to that took a space probe up was, of course, 30. All right, and 30 had aboard it David Walker as the pilot. Ron Grabe was the pilot. Norm Thagard, Mary Cleave, and Mark Lee. We've seen Mark Lee at the Space Center. Marty, he always gives a good talk. That was a quick 4-day to deploy this Magellan radar mapper that is shown there on the picture on the left. Now, because Venus is so bright in the night sky, there it is through a special filter on a spacecraft that orbited before Magellan, and it can pierce the clouds a little bit, but it's a 30-mile cloud deck on Venus, and beneath that cloud deck is acid rain falling on a 900-degree surface. But we had no idea what the surface looked like. Now, in your night sky again, here we have the layout at 8:30 at night. You're going to see Venus start poking the clouds after the sun sets at 8 o'clock. Not the clouds, the veil of twilight. You'll be seeing Venus through it. Undeniably the brightest object in the sky. There you've got these other stars lined up across as it's setting, and Mars straight up overhead. And as you look at Mars, not even close to the brightest star in the sky. The moon is big and bright behind us, rising tonight, hold your arm out. You can always cover it up with your little pinky. It's only a half a degree across, though it's going to look so big because of that moon illusion the next couple days. But we're going to go to the moon, hopefully by 2026. But then you look at Mars, 160 million miles away. You can't hardly even pick it out. You can't find Mars without me beside you, Marty, in your backyard, all right? And I'm just going to put it that way and be honest. And yet, all we're talking about is taking the starship to Mars, and the moon's just a little jumping off point along the way. I'm here to tell you, folks, Mars ain't the place for kids, all right? It's cold as hell, and it is far, far away, just like Rocket Man's song of Elton John says there. So, but yet it is still there. I can barely in my backyard telescope make out the disk of it. October last year, you could see the disk clearly, and even the polar cap and features on Mars as we recede away from Mars in our orbits around the sun. Well, in my backyard telescope, this is what Venus looks like. Just a modest little blob in there. It does go through phases like the moon does, because it's a planet in between the Earth and the sun. But through that Magellan spacecraft that STS-30 in Atlanta hoisted up in 1989, we have a globe of Mars that shows the blue areas are low areas. That is not oceans or water, but it corresponds to low areas. The brown areas are the taller peaks, with the white being the tallest. So there's very few mountains on Mars, and everything on the surface of Mars has melted down at 900 degrees. I mean, that makes lead melt. Mars, of course, is identical to the Earth in size, all right? They call us our Earth's twin, but it's truly a hellish twin. As what we're looking at here, those wavy lines on the surface of Venus are actually breaks in the surface caused by volcanic activity. There are those darker areas are some volcanoes that are active. Over 200 active volcanoes on Mars, or on Venus, I mean. And because it's so hot, it's a runaway gas greenhouse effect. And is this what happened to the Earth? Was Venus once a lush vegetation and like the Earth, full of life, and then something happened by inhabitants of it millions of years ago, or just perhaps the natural forces? Even 100 years ago, astronomers thought Mars would contain a lot of life. We didn't know it was so hot at the surface. We knew it was covered in clouds, but they were hoping it was like a lush greenhouse of clouds and not a 30-mile thick carbon dioxide, sulfuric acid, very acidic and very mortal to humans on there. So, well, a couple, like I said, we're going to talk throughout the rest of the month about the shuttles of May. We're going to talk about the Hubble last time that anybody saw it with human eyes. We're going to talk about the Hubble, when it got fixed up real good and repurposed several times, was hit by Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 in 1994, and this is Hubble telescope images of that impact on Shoemaker-Levy, the comet that burst apart and then hit the Jupiter before our eyes virtually in 1994. That was quite a sight to see. And then, of course, we have the only time that 3 astronauts went out in the payload bay, STS-49, Endeavour's maiden flight, and rescued a Telstar satellite and brought it back to be fixed. And then we also, this month, will deploy Dexter, the kind of animated robot that they have at the space station to ferry things along up and down. So, hope you've enjoyed today's Stay Curious. Want to tell everybody that we're looking forward to, of course, the Mir missions we're going to be talking about there, as Marty hands me the list of everybody watching today. Sorry if we got a little hiccups. Seems to be the normal thing of the day. Tom Usiak, nice talking to you today, Tom. And thank you, Tom, for efforting us. He has a lot to do with getting Marie Fullerton there with her husband, Gordon. He passed away 10 years ago, and we're going to hear some great stories from Marie. She's very interested in being here. Thank you, Tom and Mark Usiak, for efforting that. Daniel DeYoung, thank you for watching. Larry Pushkar, Bill Whiting, Robert Law, Christopher Mick, and Melissa Pope are watching today, along with Steve Hammer, Chris Callie. My buddy Chris, good talking to you, and Dave Stange and Cynthia Rossi. Always glad that you're staying curious with us. I know you'll all be watching tomorrow when we have Marie Fullerton on board. There's a beautiful picture of her that the UCX sent me a couple years ago out at Shuttle Fest. As you're watching that full moon rise, get you some pictures like Mark Usiak did the last full moon over his part of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And at some point in time, particularly you up north, as the moon is big and bright in the sky, you might be seeing a circle around it. And Marty told me before we went live and he saw this picture that he saw the moon have a big circle around it and didn't know what that was. Well, those are ice crystals that are 22.5 degrees from the radius, so that's 45 degrees across there, the sky. Always that size, because these crystals, the size of a rectangular prism, are what create this. And you can also see this around the sun at times, but it's high cirrus clouds with these special ice crystals in it that make it. And I'll bet some of you up north will be seeing that over this weekend as you're thawing out from the long winter months and looking forward to the months of May like I am. I love the month of May, Marty. It's always a fun time. Again, thank you, gohistorytravel.org. Please check them out, a very unique and interesting blog that they have of their travels around the world, including some space places that we're going to feature from time to time. So, Marty, hit the 3 button there to make me a little bigger.
Don't touch anything now.
Okay, not going to touch anything now. That'd be good to just say, everybody, thank you for watching today. Hope that you're with us tomorrow. I'm Mark Marquette saying, come watch us tomorrow with Marie Fullerton to bridge the space between us.
I can't tell if we're live or not. We're frozen right now. Yes, 1, 2. So getting the flashing.
Talk to me. What's going on? Are we off? We're still live.
I think it's still live.
Well,
I can't end it. It's just the computer has to catch up. There we go. I'm going to end it.
but the volume was off.
Still going to end.
Nope, we're still live. We're still live, folks. Is the audio off?
No. Yes, audio seems to be off.
So what's the problem?
You can't end it. The computer has to catch up. It's running slow. This is what happens when it crashes. So you see the flashing going on. She's not responding to any keystrokes.